And welcome back to Hannity. We continue now. Joining me in studio, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. One little point on this. So you have this website, Newt Explore 2012?
Yes.
Is what it's called. Okay.
Yep.
And when will the final decision come?
Oh, I think it's going to take a fair amount of time, at least a number of weeks, maybe 6 or 7, because you want to really. This is such a big decision if you're serious about it, and it covers so many different requirements. If you look at what Obama spent last time, I think $1 billion. And if you're serious about trying to not just run, but to both win the nomination and win the presidency, you really need to take some time to lay the groundwork, think it through, explore the possibility before you make the final decision.
All right. And you obviously, we're getting close to that time. Yeah. And all right, how would a Gingrich administration look different from an Obama administration? And I mean on 3 major fronts: on economic issues, homeland security issues, foreign affairs. How would they be different?
Well, first of all, what we ought to do this year is we ought to pass a permanent tax program and not have just this 2-year extension. Notice that we got a 2-year extension and the economy improved overnight.
You mean the Bush tax cuts?
The Bush tax cuts. Right. Literally, December we got it. All of a sudden you have unemployment coming down. We're going to run into the same problem in 2012 because it ends in 2012. The Republican House ought to pass the permanent extension of the current tax code so we get that out of the way, so there's stability for businesses to invest, so we can continue to create jobs. Then we ought to review what China, India, and Germany are doing, and we ought to reform litigation, regulation, taxation, education, health, energy, and infrastructure. And we ought to say our goal is to be the most dynamic job-creating society in the world, because that creates the prosperity that pays for Social Security, pays for our health system, enables us to be a successful country.
Can I gently disagree with you? The unemployment numbers, we only created 192,000 jobs. That's not enough to bring the unemployment number down. Isn't one of the big issues that we're not facing that this underemployment issue, and also we stop counting people that stop looking for work, and if we look at that number, we're at 17, 18% in the country.
If you, and this is going to be the challenge for the Obama administration, if you look at all the people who would have been employed 3 or 4 years ago, you've had a dramatic shrinking in the total number of Americans at work, and that's going to have a big impact as people start to come back into the market. But I don't think, if they were still fighting over the Bush tax cuts, you wouldn't even have the current job creation. That's my only point.
All right.
But they did have a positive. The Bush tax cuts, once again, had a positive impact on creating jobs.
Would you try and reduce taxes further?
Absolutely. I am for zero capital gains tax, which is the Chinese model, a 12.5% corporate rate, which is the Irish corporate tax rate, and I would be for 100% expensing to write off new machinery. So every year you could write off all the new machinery, so American workers have the best machinery in the world to be the most productive, to have the best jobs.
What do you make of all that is now happening in the Middle East and reports that the president is now putting pressure? I mean, we almost had the United States go against Israel in the United Nations, as you know. And now the pressure to put Jerusalem on the table coming from the Obama administration, and again, concede land for peace. And add to that all the instability in the Middle East as it affects oil and gas prices.
You know, this is an administration which was very aggressive about an American ally, Mubarak in Egypt, and very confused about an American opponent, Gaddafi in Libya. This is an administration which doesn't notice the demonstrations and the brutality in Tehran. And it confuses Israelis building apartments with Iranians building nuclear weapons. And I think it's very, very dangerous. And people need to understand it has a huge impact potentially on our energy prices. Gasoline prices are already up 85% since Obama became president. And there is a grave danger that you're going to see a dramatically higher increase in, if something goes bad in the Middle East, we will understand the cost of left-wingers who oppose using American energy.
So a Gingrich presidency would, A, have had a stronger voice when the Iranian dissidents were protesting. A Gingrich presidency would immediately allow drilling in Anwar, the 48 states, off the coast, nuclear reactors.
Absolutely.
Coal mining expansion.
Look, I am for every American form of energy in order to save $400 billion a year here in the U.S. to create jobs here instead of creating jobs in Venezuela or Saudi Arabia or Iran. But I go a step deeper. We ought to have an active strategy of undermining and defeating the Iranian government and replacing it with a rational, moderate, reasonable government without using military force, which is what Reagan did to the Soviet Empire with enormous success. Also, I would say on the very first day, and I voted for this as Speaker, and were I in the White House, I would immediately issue an executive order saying that every country gets to pick their own capital, and we will put our embassy where their capital is. Israel is the only country in the world that the United States does not allow to design their own capital.
How would you prevent Ahmadinejad, Iran, from getting nuclear weapons? What pressure can you bring to bear?
Well,
because we know what would happen. I believe he would use them if he had them.
You know, Close and I did a movie on Ronald Reagan and a movie on Pope John Paul II going back to Poland. In both movies, we showed how diplomatic, political, intellectual pressure brought to bear against the Soviet Empire ultimately broke it at a speed no liberal thought was possible. Iran is not that powerful a dictatorship. We should be aggressively every morning. We should have a very powerful Voice of America program. We should have subsidies going in covertly to help people organize. Would be, I think you'd have so much fun it would be dangerous.
I think you're right. Well, this is a fascinating time. I will say one thing: as these debates emerge, I think it's going to be extraordinary for the country, and a great contrast to where we go. And would you look forward to debating Obama if you won the primary?
Oh, I think no. As Ronald Reagan once said to Walter Mondale, I would try not to hold his youth and inexperience against him.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, good to see you.
Good to see you.
We'll follow the process.